Okay, so the topic that I've chosen today in the same series of native art is Celtic knots. Uh, okay, so Celtic knots are a very particular design element in several artifacts from, I guess, European countries, ranging literally from you have stuff in England, Scotland, in Ireland, right up to even Central Europe. So there's a very interesting story about who the Celts were. Now, this word is often confusing in pronunciation right from the start. Is it Celts? Is it Celts? So both are okay. In certain places, like sports teams, you will use Celtics. But in a common parlance, when you talk about the people, it is Celtic with a k sound, and that is because that is the more accepted Latin term, because the term Celtics was given to a group of people or a group of tribes by the Romans. And the Celtic people themselves never called themselves Celtic. So it's just they put together certain characteristics of that band of people, the various tribes that existed, and they were all just bunched together as Celtic. So the Romans did a lot of documentation. So you have Celtics on the one side, then you have the Goths on the other side, which were again a word that was used by the Romans, and also barbarians was also used by Romans. So these are terms made up by the people who actually landed up writing the history of the time. So the Celtic people's influence in art, architecture, and culture can be seen from about 3000 BC or so. But it was most prominent during the Iron Age, which would be about 1000 to 400 BC. So that's 3000 years ago. That is the time when they've started finding a lot of artifacts around the region of Switzerland. That's the oldest area, but there are such artifacts that have been found all over Europe. So there isn't like an origin story of where these people came from or what kind makes them like one people. But they did have certain common themes. And considering how vast their influence was, it seemed as if they were not seemed, it is true that they were warriors, but not as organized as the Romans were. So there wasn't too much of literature about them or about their culture. They were mostly agrarian. They weren't building massive cities and doing any kind of sophisticated culture building as such. For them, they believed in a very simplistic life and laid a lot of importance to the worship of nature, and followed more or less like a pagan religion. So they had multiple gods, and everything was all their rituals were built around nature and natural cycles. So a lot of this is seen in their art, and their art is seen mostly in things like jewelry or weaponry or metalware, things like that. Hardly any painting, but in modern times, it this symbol, or at least the knots, have been so intriguing that they have been used widely in a lot of places. You will see a lot of Celtic design tattoos. You will also see them used as borders. You will see them used in to almost instantly signify a cultural identity. So today, the area of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, these places are considered more Celtic in origin. The Scandinavian countries would be considered more Viking in origin. There are subtle differences between the two, but this Celtic knot or the knot design has gone in both ways. You will see it even in some Viking design, and you'll also see it in the Celtic design as well. Now I've shared some pictures on the group so I can show you a little bit about where these knots come from. So one of the best examples has been in calligraphy, and this is one page that is like the hero of the Book of Kells. This is called a Chi Rho symbol, CHI Chi and RHO Rho. That's the symbol used to signify the cross. And if you see, this has got a lot of very, very intricate design. And the page is exquisite. This page must be maybe about 11 by 14 inches. It's a huge book. And this entire book, it's housed in at the Trinity College in Dublin. And every day they will exhibit one spread. So every day the page changes. So I'm going to show you a quick close-up of some of the pictures from there to show you how that knot is seen. Like in this case, you will see in the details that there is a knotted design in the back, somewhere over here as well. Because it allows to create a lot of detail with a very simple structure, it has been used all over the place. And the knot is just one example of this decoration. This is it's not the only design that was used in the Celtic design dictionary, I would say. So there were a lot of swirls and a lot of three-pronged designs as well. Over here you see a better version of just using this knotted design on the entire border and bringing it in. So it looks very formal and yet it looks very decorative all at the same time. And here are some close-ups of the design. Essentially, the Celtic knot was meant to symbolize the interconnectivity of everything in life. So we are going to start off with making some rather simple knots. Have any of you made these knots before? Have you tried them before? Okay, so then I know the starting point. So I'm going to show you some very simple ways of overlapping. And then we are going to, once we understand how overlapping works, then we will take the overlapping into the realm of making these Celtic knots. Overlapping sometimes can be very confusing because essentially overlapping involves visualizing a three-dimensional interaction of objects, like one object over another object. In 2 dimensions, you will have no overlaps. You'll have the object next to each other, and that's as good as you can get. So interestingly, this one feature is a contrast between what we did last week, the form line design, where there was no overlapping. You cannot have overlapping because you cannot show, well, in the classical form, you don't show any kind of dimension. You don't show depth. But in this one, it's all about overlapping. So that's quite a contrast. So we are going to start off with making just some simple overlapping patterns, and then we will move on to the more complex patterns in the Celtic knot. And finally, we'll make something that is like a decorative Celtic knot, which you could probably make into a bookmark or something to start with. It requires a whole lot of practice. So everywhere where I have looked for resources, these are people's practice books, and practice can be done on books like these. So if you've got a square ruled book, you can just do a lot of different knot styles. I'm going to show you these two today, but you can do a lot of this practice on a book like this. And this is like a great doodling idea. As of now, we have our drawing book. So in this, I want us to just understand some basic rules of overlapping. As is normally the case, the left left half can be used to practice all these, and then on the right half we will make the design. So let's make a rather simple. One second, my wire is getting in the way. Let's start off with just making a square. And make a small square this time. Usually I'm asking everyone to make stuff big. But this time just make a square that's about an inch or so in length and width. And divide it into, let's say, let me see my design here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, let's divide it into 4 parts. So we divide it in half vertically and then in quarters. This way we get more or less equal length, then half and half, so equal width over here as well. Now in this, we are going to start off by making horizontal and vertical lines parallel to each other. And I'm going to make them within each block. It's pretty wide, so a horizontal line close to the top edge and going a little beyond into the box on the right, and the parallel line close to the bottom edge and going into the next box. So we have to go over the border line between. And we do the same thing with vertical in the second box, bringing it down. And essentially we're going to fill this up alternately with vertical and horizontal lines. But in order to make it look like an overlap, the next square that we make the lines in, we have to make it exactly in line beyond the vertical line, so that it looks as if it's a ribbon that has passed underneath another ribbon, or maybe a basket. Now when we come to the second row, we do the same thing. Remember to draw the line touching the earlier horizontal line, close to the left edge and close to the right edge respectively. And in doing this, you will notice that there is a space created between all 4 of these, which should be a square, since we are working on a square. So if it is not a square, then it maybe your distances are not accurate, or one line is higher and lower. These squares should also be more or less equal. Are you getting this? This is not too confusing, I hope. No? It can be, and if you feel you're confused, don't feel too bad about it. This is one of those things that we take for granted until we have to do it, and then when you're making all these lines in different directions, at one point your brain just freezes and you have no idea what is happening, and that's very normal, can happen to anyone. So if that is happening, just stop, let me know, and I can help you sort it out. Make sure that each line that you draw is continuing from an earlier line. That you have to be very careful. So this is your basic basket weave. And this itself can be a very nice pattern. You can make this for we've actually made baskets also. Now we have to pull out a few lines from in these vacant blocks along the edges. Just stretch back or pull forward some lines of the ribbon part that has not extended. These are just very tiny lines here. But these are connections that we are going to now mix together. Here as well. Now these are the loose ends, and you can connect loose ends any way you want to and create all sorts of knots in this. So for our ease, we have even number strips one way and another. Let's try connecting. Let's see what happens if we connect the two lines which are next to each other. So you will take the lines which are closest to each other and join them on both sides. So the second and the third line, and sixth and seventh line, and then you will draw a semicircle around in such a way that it looks as if this ribbon continues over. Okay, and then we can join the other side the same way. So I'm extending the line outward a little bit outside of that first square we have made, so that I get a nice graceful round. Now this is not a Celtic knot, but this is a certain knot or knotting system, one might say, that resembles the kind of knotting you see in the Celtic designs. And by
Similar to the
repeating the
column of
same
Iwould.
process, sorry?
It's very similar to the column down south.
Yes, it is. It is very similar. So in this case, why I think this is not a Celtic knot is, and it could be a design in the, I guess, Celtic repertoire. The fact is that we are creating a link between what looks like two, or sorry, not a link, a lock that involves two pairs of links. It's not one continuous line. But it still works because you have this interesting crisscross knotting design. In order to make this look three-dimensional, you can shade just around the area which is overlapped. So any place where a line goes over a ribbon-like part, you can shade. So in some places you will shade vertically, some places you will shade horizontally. And this gives a very nice effect. Now do not shade on the part which goes from over. That's not how things work. When I've taught this to kids, sometimes they get so confused that they will shade that entire intersection because they don't know what goes over and under. So wherever you see a line crossing, that's where you will draw a shadow on the part that is being crossed over. This too sometimes can need practice, and that's perfectly okay. Sometimes there are things that only after you see them you can evaluate whether or not it looks correct. That's just how illustration or drawing works. So whenever I tell you these faux pas that happen in art, believe me, I have myself done these. So I know that it's not it's not a very natural again, that is my argument against saying when somebody is really good at art that they were born with it. No, I don't know anyone who hasn't gone through these kind of confusing situations, which I suppose if you're born with these things, you won't do. Okay, how are your knots looking? They're looking okay? Hmm? Everything in place. All right. Okay, now let's advance this. This time we are going to change the system with which we made the lines. Here we made lines vertical and horizontal to the vertical and horizontal axis in a square. But many Celtic knots were actually on the diagonal. So let's try making the same thing on the diagonal, but it's not just about tilting your square into a diagonal. Here's what we do. We start off again with a square. Make it small again because as you can see the design extends outward quite a bit. So again an inch by inch is fine. Now this square we will divide into 3 equal parts vertically and horizontally. So this will just be eyeballing the shape. In our grid of 9 squares, we are now going to make equal sized circles at the intersections, at least the internal intersections, and in the space right in the center of all the squares. So these are essentially our negative spaces. We've already marked out our negative spaces. So we have in all 9 squares, that's the grid. And then we have made a grid of 9 plus 4, 13 circles, right? You don't have to worry about whether 13 or 14 or whatever, as long as you make them in the right place. Now, wherever you see a diamond created by these circles, there we are going to make one pair of parallel lines. So I just want you to observe this. I have a diamond shape here. I have a diamond shape here, here, and here. But I do not have a diamond shape here. There's no circle over here. So there's no diamond here, right? Okay, Shreya, just have a look at this. Don't look down. This is again, I have to keep telling this. Don't do this like you did it in school. When I'm explaining something, look here because that's really important. So observe where you have these diamond shapes, and where you do not have a complete diamond shape, don't make any of these lines that I'm showing you. Okay. So I'm going to be making lines like this. Essentially, all the diamonds in this order can have lines which are going parallelly in the direction shown here, northeast to southwest, and then in the others I will be making lines going in the other direction. Okay, so I'm going to stop here so that you can make this drawing. Let me know when you're done and then we will finalize this whole thing. So even in the kids class, this is for you, Shreya. I have to tell all the kids to keep their pencils down. And I want to see their hands, and I have to tell them, wait. Now I want you to see this first, and then do it, because I have also done this in class. We in our school system is such that they want us to hear and quickly note down, and we figure out certain things. But I sometimes feel that there's a lot of loss of information when that happens, when you are not looking at what the instructor is doing. But our instructors never did anything, so we really don't have to look up. In this particular case, I feel that if you miss out on one line, you can mess up the whole thing. So a few things, everything is good if when I'm drawing, if you just look up. And the second thing is, if you feel you need time, let me know. I'll wait for you. Even if there's one person who
Yeah,
needs.
I was actually really behind. I'm sorry, I was so behind that I was like, oh, I'll completely mess it up if I don't do the initial steps. So that's
Yeah.
why I was a bit,
Yes,
yeah.
I know, I can understand that. So just let me know, just ask me to wait for a couple of minutes. It does not take too long. Everyone else can also practice it. So we can wait for that couple of minutes. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Today, when you are drawing this, I would suggest, until you are sure about your lines, make them very light, like the ones I've made over here. And today, please keep an eraser handy. That it's very unusual, but today's day, if you need to erase a line, go ahead and do it, just so that you don't get confused with which line is right. Because that's all we're working with, just lines. Okay, is everyone done? Shall I move forward? Okay. Right, so now we have this pattern. Like I said, we are going to draw lines from one side of this circle to the same side on the next circle and the line below. So it should look like it's a tangent, not through the circle, but a tangent from one end to the other. This you can draw with me now. And the same thing on the other circles on the other side, so that the two lines are directly close to each other. The circles are on the outside of the line. And we do the same thing below. When we draw this line, we go a little further than the circle, extending the line a little beyond the edge, not just coming and stopping by the circle, because as you can see, we have to draw another line which will come and connect with that line, and that line too has to be drawn at a tangent to our guiding circles. All the lines need to be parallel or perpendicular to each other, like the lines which are leaning right should all be leaning at the same angle, and those leaning left should all be leaning at the same angle, and they must in turn be perpendicular to each other. This thing happens very naturally if our starting point is a square. Now it's very simple. We can extend our lines outside and beyond the circles along the periphery like this, exactly like how we did it on the edges in the sample above. And now we have these open-ended lines that we have to connect. So connecting this is also very simple. If we were to connect them to each other like this, we would probably make 2 links connecting to each other. But this time round, let's link it another way and see what happens. So instead of connecting on the corners, let's take the corner line and make a more than a semicircle on this edge and see what happens here. Looks beautiful, looks logical. Do the same thing on the opposite side. The 2 lines on the corner make a circle. They come around, out and join. Same over here as well. This has to just look like it's a parallel line, like a rope. And don't worry about these weird lines happening. That'll happen in the beginning. So you can draw it light if you want to. It must look almost circular. After you're satisfied with the line, then you can join it up. Now this is very Celtic. The reason for this is we have now achieved a continuous infinite line. This can keep going round and round and round. Had we connected the other points, we would have gotten 2 links. So I want to show you that as well. And if you want, you can also try making it. That'll only give you more practice. It's exactly the same. 3 parts, vertically and horizontally. Draw circles. The lines are drawn exactly the same way. It's only how we make the connections outside of those lines that make a difference to the design, where you choose to make the connections from. In the design on top, we have connected the corners. In the design below, if we connect the sides, this is what we will get. So can you see how using the same grid you can create more than one pattern? And all of this depends on your own imagination, how you want to, what lines you want to connect. That's why that practice in a grid book will make it a lot of fun. Okay, now let's make a slightly bigger design. I'm going to show you how to make these 2. And this is, sorry? So we'll make these 2 just as more variations, and then this one we'll color as well. Shall we move on to the next design? Or do you want me to wait a bit?
Just a minute.
Okay. Alright, moving on. Now let's try changing the square to a rectangle shape. So draw a rectangle, but only draw 3 sides right now. Divide this into 2 parts vertically and then draw squares. So this allows you to draw as many squares as you need, as long as your strip might be. So we are making only 6 squares. In these we will make circles or hollows on all the apexes and in the center. Now you know the rule, just look for a diamond shape, a complete diamond shape, and you can draw a line going, a pair of lines going to the right or the left, anyhow you want to. So let's start off with drawing 2 lines at the right, exactly like how we did over here. Now this time the difference is that we have drawn these hollow circles on the extreme ends as well. Let's see how this design turns out. Always look for a full diamond shape. Don't make anything where you do not have 4 hollow circles. Alright, this is done. And now just extend the line out into where you see these triangular spaces, wherever is necessary. And now you yourself will start seeing how the lines connect. You can join this line here and see how this can connect to the ribbon underneath there, and bring the other line outside the circle a little bit, but inside the hollow, touching the circle of the hollow from the inside. So it comes outside the edge but turns in, just skimming the circle on the corner. Now what do we do on the edges over here? Here now we will round these edges off. And now you can fix the lines so that they look continuous. And just run your pencil down any one line and check if you are getting this infinite connectivity. If you can keep going round and round in this form, that means we have managed our connectivity. Okay, I'm just coming back in a minute.
Yeah.
How's it going? Is it coming easier now? Now imagine this whole thing, you can just extend and make it into a bookmark. So I happen to have a sheet here. While you're finishing your work, I'll just show you how to make this. So in this case, I'm going to divide my shape into even numbers like this. First in half, then in quarters, and so on, because I want to fit the design in this page. I don't want to have to cut it. This is not going to give me a square. I'm going to have to cut it. So in the event that we don't get squares, let's see what we can do over here. Yeah, this was still the best strategy. So I'll have this extra space left over, which I'll probably write the name of the person or do something like that. You can always improvise. Are you done with the previous designs? Do you want to make the bookmark or do you want to make this design? So this one we can paint here. Bookmark we can make separately. Do you have a little sheet of paper like that you can use? Alright, so I'll wait for you to take the paper and make this. We'll make the designs on these two and then paint them simultaneously. We'll get more done in less time. If you don't have a paper, you can just make it over here. Let's start off making those hollows on the intersections and the edges. I'm leaving this part extra. Maybe I can make a square, I don't know. Yeah, I think so. This is fine. And then let's make these hollows in the center of each of those squares. Now here's one thing I wanted to tell you. When you're making these shapes, look at the number of lines that I have made. And I'm constantly correcting them. Like when you're making this circle, let your hand move around a little more than is needed to make that circle. Somewhere in the vicinity of those shapes is that correct circle. Contrary to how these lines look, this is actually the sign of good control over one's line. If you'll end up making just a circle right in the center and then you look back and say, oh my god, now this is not in the center, you're limiting yourself to only the ability of your drawing your guidelines. Alright, let's begin. Let's draw all the parallel lines. These are big squares, so my parallel lines obviously are going to become bigger. Then the lines opposite direction, maintaining that right angle intersection. Don't go too far into the corners, because where you don't have a diamond shape, you will not draw any lines. And now we'll connect. Now here's something interesting one can do also. Instead of connecting it in the round like this, you can take the line straight outward, beyond that circle, beyond also the original edge of the rectangle that we had started off with, so that you get this very lovely Gothic pointed edges. Everywhere else we are dodging around those circles. The circles are the hollow spaces between these ribbons passing around. So if your line is going into the circle or is including the circle within that ribbon shape, you're probably including an unnecessary space. Everywhere we go, you'll see we just skim around the circles. They're like the roundabouts. And when we come to the corner again, you can go, this is the only place you go, around the circle and create this very nice pointed shape. Very, very Celtic. If you're done with this, you can use a 0.3 or a 0.5 to now ink this part. Now when you're inking, just make sure that you draw these lines very carefully. That connectivity is very important, so I would advise you to only follow in that order. But it's not necessary to do it like this. So long as you can manage to draw that connectivity convincingly, you can start making the lines at one end. Or you can also make these lines like how we made them in the first place. Remember, your lines in the final pen work will change. So don't stick to, I mean, there's no obligation to stick to your pencil lines. The pencil lines were mere guidelines. The graphic style of these knots makes the final work so satisfying. You have nice bold lines. The internal geometry allows us to make these shapes fairly uniform. There's something very satisfactory about this process. There we go. So potentially you can make this along maybe borders or edges of your design or a card or something and make this look very formal yet with a very simple design. Now let's make the other motif, which is also an extension from here. Are you done? Are you done with this one? Can we begin with the next one or a minute?
Minute.
Yeah, I'll wait. Shall we proceed? Okay. So the one knot I want to show you is where you can move outside of this grid. So this time we are going to make what looks like a different motif over here, starting with the same kind of grid, a 6 square grid. So we have 3 columns and 2 rows. It's a horizontal grid. Same process. Draw our hollow circles at the apexes and then at the center of all these circles or squares. Now we're going to do one extra thing. We are going to project a point outward, imagining there's one more square, and we are going to draw a circle in the center of that extended square. So this is the shape we are going to get. And this is going to allow our ring or our string to go outside of just this kind of shape and yet come back and loop in. So this gives us an extension to the line. We still follow that diamond shape rule. Wherever you see a diamond, a full diamond, you will make those lines. And we pretty much get something like this. And here now we can extend our circles out like we did earlier, like over here, or you can extend it out to make this Gothic shape. And now on the corners we can also make a shape like this. So let's do both. I'm going to make my corners pointy and these projections round. And let's go ahead and ink this part as well. This time, after we ink it, we have to color it as well. So we will make an internal edge or a border. Now over here, I'm going to make sure that these two are aligned and about the same size. You can't have this flat edge and the other flat edge at a different height. That'll just look really odd. Similarly, where they join on the outside must also vertically align to the point it joins to on the other side. So for this, you might need to mark these lines carefully with pencil first a couple of times to make sure that this alignment is there. If you need to, draw a box there to make sure that that's working. Now using a thinner pen, like maybe a 0.2 or even a 0.1, we have to draw a line that is a little distance away from the edge and create a border that's parallel. In order to draw this best, keep rotating the book. Wherever you come to a turn. It's not aligned over here. I hope the rest of my design is so mesmerizing that nobody notices it. Okay, now that this is done, I will erase all the construction lines and we can begin painting. So as far as possible, always do this border, draw the border along the edge, because it gives such a lovely finishing touch to the design. Plus, because of all these overlaps, your design will never be clearly visible if we don't make the border along the edge. Many of these designs will have maybe a color on the inside and a gold or something on the border. Now for painting this, you can make it very interesting. You don't have to paint one flat color in watercolor. But before you paint it, you can shade in pencil. So the same way that we shaded in the first section, in the first sample, you can create a dark shadow just underneath the parts that are overlapping. So everything will start looking fuzzy and more three-dimensional. And after you've done this, you can paint it. Now you can also make the shading in paint or with stippling. I just enjoy the subtle shading effect of pencil, which is almost like it's an uncanny realism. So combine that with pen and paint, it looks really good. I think this is done. I can extend it even more, I think, the shadow. And now using a medium sized brush, I will paint just the central section in a combination of cerulean blue and emerald green. This emerald green is very much, I think, a Celtic color. It's very mystical and is often seen in a lot of Celtic design as well, a lot in Ireland. So I'm going to make this like a emerald green, blue green painting by changing the color every time I dip my brush in paint. So I'm not really looking for a refined flat color anyway. Just make sure that you have enough color in your palette so that you don't take too much water or change the consistency of the paint too much. And once you paint over that pencil shading, it becomes pretty permanent, so you won't be able to erase it. And also the other advantage is that it will become indelible in that sense. You can of course also make patterns or textures inside this part. Anything that will still make it look contiguous, like one constant line running through, because you don't want that changing. So any design you put inside this, make sure that it fills up this whole area. Design or texture, whatever you do. Don't keep it too vacant. When you're painting, remember to just stain the paper and move forward. Don't go back and forth and back and forth. Now this is another thing you could probably make on a Christmas ornament and put it up. There you go. Now if you feel you want to add some more dimension to this, we can do the same thing to the entire shape. You can create a small, give any two sides or the edges facing any two sides a little extra pencil line and make it look as if there's a shadow underneath that section. You won't really see a shadow below the whole thing, but even if you do that, that's not totally incorrect. But I prefer to show my shadows from any two sides. So bottom and right is good enough. The moment the line turns and you come towards the right side, left side, then you have to stop. Like over here, the line over here is facing the left side, so I won't make it there, but a little further on the right side I can still make. Right side, right side of the edge, not on the left, right and bottom. And again, if you feel that the shadows are not as dark as you would like them to be, you can go over them one more time and make them deeper. So once you put watercolor on it, the lead also goes in much darker, the lead of the pencil. And there we have it.